How in the hell have I not seen The Wraith? The Wraith stars Charlie Sheen, Sherilyn Fenn, Nick Cassavetes, and is directed by Mike Marvin. What's up, guys? It's Patreon request time. If you are of a certain tier, then you can get a request in your honor. For this one, this is going to be for Angela from Arctic Vixen. Her request is The Wraith, and this was a really freaking interesting movie.
There's a kid out there using his car to kill people.
What are you doing? Packard, stop!
Get in the car!
What are you doing?
No! Who are you?
The Wraith. If you've done nothing wrong, you've got nothing to fear.
And it just reminds me that there's so many like 80s movies that somehow slipped under my radar and that I'd never even heard of, but they have like so many actors that we would watch in the 80s, like Charlie Sheen, like Sherilyn Fenn. But looking forward to getting into this review. And also, before I go into any further, speaking of Patreon, if you're not a Drumdums patron but you want to support me just on a case-by-case basis, kind of like a tip jar type deal, I just started up this page on buymeacoffee.com/drumdums. If you go there, there's a link to it in the top right of the Drumdums main page. Click on that icon. It's like a yellow icon, I think. You can go right there and you can buy me a coffee. It's a fun, little, easy way to support the channel. And thank you so much, you guys, for all that you do. Anyway, The Wraith, quick plot synopsis. This is a strange movie. It's like a hybrid of like Mad Max with Close Encounters of the Third Kind. It's got some strange stuff going on there. And a little bit of cocaine mixed in. Not really, but it seems like it. You'll see what I'm talking about. This will be a spoiler review, by the way, because this is a 1980s movie, okay? So you should know better. There are these group of bullies, you know, 80s style, led by this guy named Packard, and he's completely fascinated with this girl, Carrie, who's played by Sherilyn Fenn. And she used to date this guy named Jamie Hankins, and there's these flashbacks in the movie where Jamie is killed by Packard and his gang. Does that sound familiar? We'll get to that. Ever since Jamie was killed, she's not really dating Packard, but he has this abusive control over her. So then along comes this guy from space, I guess, that flies in. It's Charlie Sheen, so it makes sense. But we're gonna talk about his character, not Charlie Sheen as a person, okay? But then he comes in and he looks all like Mad Max, badass and everything. He's got this great black suit on, but he's got this freaking badass car, the Turbo Interceptor, and he's one of the few people in town that's not afraid of Packard and his gang. Another thing that Packard and his gang like to do is they will just go up to random people and race them. They will force them to race them, and if they lose the race, then they get their car, kind of like Fast and the Furious. There's a lot of movies that took influence from this movie, actually. There's a scene at the beginning of the movie where Packard, he's bullying this guy who's making out with his girlfriend, and he says, "You're gonna race me, and I'm gonna take your car." You know, these are probably the most direct types of bullies that I've ever seen. You know, there's more like passive types of bullies, for lack of a better word, and then there's bullies that are just so freaking in your face, and it's like every time you see them, you want to run the other way because you're like, I just don't want to deal with this shit. That's the way Packard and his gang are. They remind me of like Savage Streets and that gang, the way they were treating Linda Blair and her, like a bunch of girls. So I think those are even worse. But Packard and his gang, they're pretty crazy. But eventually Carrie meets Jake, played by Charlie Sheen, and they strike up kind of a chemistry with each other. And he definitely reminds her of her old boyfriend, Jamie. He even has the scars on his back. So we pretty much figure out early on that this is Jamie coming back. I don't know if you'd call it like reincarnated from space. I don't know. It's kind of strange. But during the movie, he develops this like fixation on Carrie. Now, I've heard people state that this movie does have a little bit of a Crow feel to it, like The Crow might have been influenced, although was the graphic novel written before this movie? I'm not sure, because I think the graphic novel for The Crow was written in the mid-80s. I'll have to check, but This does have a scenario where this couple, they are attacked by this gang, and the boyfriend, instead of the girlfriend, is brutally murdered. But in this situation, the girlfriend doesn't come back to avenge them. It's instead her boyfriend who kind of comes back from the dead, like Eric Draven, to avenge his own death and to save his girlfriend, ultimately. Very similar to The Crow. And then in The Crow, you have this gang of toadies, and in The Crow, it's a lot more realistic and serious than in this group. But, you know, one of the toadies' names was Skank. And in this movie, there's a character named Skank. And the toadies in this movie seem crazy, like just completely out of it. That's the cocaine reference. They seem like they're freaking on cocaine or something like that. They have the nicest freaking auto garage I've ever seen in my life with LED lights. Like, were they way ahead of their time? Because everybody, including myself, uses LED lights now. But I don't remember in the 80s they were using LED lights that much. But it's a nice auto garage. Now, also, there is this cop by the name of Loomis, right? Loomis? Randy Quaid, played by Randy Quaid. This is the dumbest freaking cop I've ever seen in my life. The evidence is literally like right there in front of him. If he did just a little bit of groundwork, he would put the pieces together. But you would swear this guy is so freaking stupid that he can't figure out that it's this gang that murdered Jamie. You would almost swear that he was in cahoots with them. That's how dumb he is. And I don't know if he's meant to be that dumb in the script, but coming across on the screen, he seems really freaking dumb. But if you're gonna have a dumb cop, you might as well have Randy Quaid play him. At least you get that charm. But Packard is an interesting character too, because this guy is like just completely fixated on Carrie. He kind of reminds me of the jerk, the bully in Better Off Dead. You know, that guy he was 100% complete asshole all the way. That's the way this guy is.
Well, you sure got my vote for cutest couple. Better shave her a little closer before you kiss her goodnight.
And he just is obsessed with Carrie, and she literally tells him in the car, I don't love you at all. I don't want to be with you. Leave me alone. And any guy that comes near her, that talks to her, Packard just freaking loses it and tries to intimidate the guy and attack the guy, even kill the guy. Like, what is the deal, man? But this is one of those movies that goes so far pushing the envelope, you know, to try to just create a world. This is like world building, even though it's set on Earth, but it's still a sci-fi movie. I've said this in the past. I recently said this on a stream. The two crimes of movies is being either generic or being boring. And this is neither one of those. You know, this is a very creative movie. It's got some really bad acting at times, but it's interesting as hell. Like, I couldn't take my eyes off of it. And I was having a blast just enjoying like that 80s flair that it has. Clint Howard, I mean, if you have Clint Howard in a movie, that's something right there. Clint Howard always brought something interesting to the table. And there's a definite Eraserhead type homage in his character, because if you look at the way he looks, you know, with the high hair in the front and everything. Also, you got some great like car chase scenes. Matter of fact, there was a guy behind the scenes that died in this movie, a camera operator. They had a camera on one of the vehicles, and I guess it rolled or something like that and killed the guy. And you can see the danger too when you're looking at these scenes. You know, these cars are just racing and the camera's just like right there. It just lifts the intensity. I mean, hell, just growing up, I had friends that actually died in car accidents from racing. So it's a scary thing. But that car's badass too. It definitely reminds me of like Kit from Knight Rider. But it was an actual car called the Dodge M4S. I don't know if that car was actually created for this movie. But yeah, it was a working car with an engine and everything, and it was badass. I like a badass car in a movie. Now, as far as any cons, I don't think Charlie Sheen really brings that much to the table in this movie. You know, he's very kind of melancholy and just, you know, he doesn't really jump out of his shell or anything in the movie. When he's in the costume, which I don't even know if that's Charlie Sheen in that costume, then it gets interesting. You know, he's a badass. He's a vigilante. But when he just is Charlie Sheen, I don't really get anything out of the character. You know, look at like Brandon Lee as the Crow I mean, that's straight up Brandon Lee, but man, he gives it his all in every scene. This is a character that's coming back to avenge his own death. I'd like to see a little bit of craziness out of him, you know? And you don't get any of that. And maybe that's part of the reason why this movie didn't do as well. But I believe it does have a cult following, and I could definitely see why. A lot of fun to be had. And for an 80s flick, I'm definitely going to give it a purchase worthy, for sure. I wish they would have maybe cast somebody differently than Charlie Sheen. Matter of fact, Johnny Depp actually tried out for the role, and I think Johnny Depp would have done a damn good job because he was dating Sherilyn Fenn at the time, lucky bastard. And so he was trying out for the part, but it went to Charlie Sheen. But I didn't think Charlie Sheen really brought that much to the character. But I loved everybody else. I loved Sherilyn Fenn, and she was great. So anyway, guys, let me know your thoughts on The Wraith. Check this movie out if you haven't. I bet there's a few of you that haven't seen this, because I didn't. Also, be sure to come over to Killer Flicks, where we talk horror all day and every day, and on Fridays, we do Free For All Fridays. Follow me on my socials. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a good day, and Drumdum out.